Eyes for Impact, a tool for participatory visualized assessment and planning for effective scripture impact, based on 6 I questions. In today's Eyes for Impact lesson, we're going to look at the 2 questions interact with others and influenced by role models. Both of these 2 questions are to do with the social aspects of communication design. Let's start with the question interact with others. This question looks at how much end users are able to interact with others on the content presented through your media and communication strategies. In many ways, the platforms used for engaging your audience will have a big influence on how much interaction your audience can have with others, but product design and development processes also affect the level of interaction among and with audience members. This question looks at factors like: are audience members able to ask questions or suggest answers, perhaps even share testimonies? Can your audience suggest topics in order to influence what is being talked about? Does this product or product platform combination allow you to offer your audience a sense of social belonging and safety? Can audience members be heard and valued for their views and experiences? Here's why social interaction is such an important factor in having an impact on and promoting engagement with your audience. First of all, as Albert Bandura demonstrated through his research and his social learning theory, the number one factor that determines what people learn is other people. Whenever people adopt new social behavior or integrate new attitudes or knowledge into their personal behavior and decision-making, this comes through observing others in social settings and through social role modeling. Bandura observes that all human beings learn new behaviors primarily through observing the actions of role models and evaluating the consequences of those actions for themselves. Not only are people each other's biggest influencers in terms of learning new behavior, social dynamics also have a major impact on what information is considered to be trustworthy and what isn't. From a media point of view, this means that what others think about any given information we obtain through media, be it through face-to-face interaction or digital media, has a major impact on how useful or trustworthy we consider this information to be. It is therefore safe to say that what other people say and do acts as a kind of filter to what we consider to be worthwhile information and behavior. Picard puts it this way: while consumers of media will generally appreciate any information relating to any of their needs or to any problems they see in their community, even a single person of influence can have so much weight that if another individual held in high esteem by that user questions the information obtained, the expected utility of that information may be lowered or become uncertain. According to Campbell, the importance of social interaction in learning and communication has only increased compared to the past, because today facts and truth are endangered. As a result, she believes that nonprofits have a moral obligation to engage authentically on social media, both to increase trust in institutions and to connect people with the causes and issues they care most about. In other words, the saturation with media content, including often conflicting views and information, means today's audiences are drawn even more towards social interaction as their primary way of assessing what information and values are worth pursuing. Authenticity to them is found in the ability to interact and express their views in order to assess what others really believe before any new ideas are absorbed or time is committed to learning from others. The good news is that people are still hungry for engagement, for meaningful conversations, but learning new things for them is also about their own perspectives being heard and intentionally creating an atmosphere in which people can learn from one another. It is therefore not surprising that according to a recent study among Facebook users, people want to spend time on Facebook when they are able to engage with content in a meaningful way. And that content needs to invite conversation, not just consumption. In the words of Jones, when we apply the social learning principle to Christian ministry, we find that conversation is fundamental to discipleship, because discipleship doesn't happen by tossing biblical content at people. Discipleship is the product of dialogue about how to apply that content to people's lives. When you discuss the interact with others question during an Eyes for Impact session, it can be helpful to know what types of things can promote authentic interaction. Here are a few examples. Listening groups. If well facilitated, these can help people feel safe to interact and learn from one another. Social media groups. If members intentionally build on each other's comments, questions, and testimonies, and do not just send emojis, images, and videos back and forth, this can have a powerful social learning effect. Call-in programs on radio or television with question and answer times or quiz shows. Debates or talk shows in audio or video. This can take place with or without audience participation. Interview-based content like documentaries. These can create social interactivity within the content and during production phase, but they can also be accompanied by further social interaction through things like call-in shows and the like. Questions or quizzes, games, embedded in content. Including such elements in your content or program can encourage further social interaction. Participatory content creation. Developing local drama, film, or debates through a participatory process that builds on the testimonies and ideas of your audience can promote social interaction and learning during the content production phase, as well as encouraging continued discussions among listeners and viewers. Just think of how soap operas often lead to continued discussions at home about the characters and stories you have just been watching or listening to. Now going back to the social learning theory. Albert Bandura not only proved how important being able to observe others and learn from the consequences of their actions is, but also that such role modeling or social learning happens through media role models. In fact, it became clear that messages that are embedded in dramatic entertainment genres are much more likely to change people's behavior than simple factual information. This brings us to our second Eyes for Impact question, which again has to do with social learning. The influenced by role models question looks at whether or not our audience is able to observe and learn from narratives and role models which they consider as worthy examples. This means we must ask questions such as, who does the target audience or its subgroups consider as role models? Who are their influencers? How can such influencers be identified and involved in communication? What narratives, like testimonies, audio drama, or films, just to name a few examples, can be used or developed in the context of the audience to offer role modeling that links to their realities? As you think through the influenced by role models question, it is important to note that entertainment education, meaning using entertainment or storytelling for educational purposes, is a very important tool in social role modeling. Films and other dramatic genres that include a great deal of storytelling have been used for decades for educational purposes and advertisement, and this with great effect. As radio producer McLaughlin writes, the formula of 90% entertainment and 10% information and message has proved most effective in influencing listeners' hearts, minds, and actions all over the world. Entertainment education or social role modeling is so powerful because of the powerful emotional connection and social identification they create with the audience. In many ways, we should not be surprised, since Jesus himself taught almost exclusively through parables, allowing people to discover his message and wisdom through the behavior of role models as seen in everyday life events. Even in the Old Testament, we frequently see God's messengers using narratives to break through the hearts and minds of their audiences. Here's an example. In their discussion, the team decides that the Old Testament app in the Mambila language doesn't lead to much interaction with others because it includes no audible reflection questions and no quizzes or games that would stimulate reflection or an exchange with others over the Word of God. Also, the team notes that most people build and maintain relationships with others by talking about the daily realities they face and which they have in common with others. This means that unless the app is intentionally used in a listening group with much room for sharing and praying for one another, or possibly for meditations in church or with children or youth, allowing them to ask questions, share and be encouraged, there is not going to be much social impact or learning happening. They decide to give it 0 points for this question. Next, the team discusses to what degree the Old Testament app leads to end users being influenced by social role models. Looking at this question, the team decides to give the Mambila Old Testament app 0.5 points out of 2 for role modeling, because there are no activities built into the app or the use of it that allow role models to influence the end users, apart from the role models found in the biblical narratives themselves. However, only a small percentage of dedicated churchgoers with good Bible knowledge have developed the skill and knowledge required to apply the example of biblical persona from a very different socio-cultural context to their own lives. As the team concludes its assessment, it ends up with an overall impact of 2.5 points out of 12 points. The team now has the choice of assessing another product or approach, or it may decide to use the ideas that have come up during the assessment of the app to plan new activities to increase its impact. Here you see an example of the activities in terms of planning for the future so that the app can create more impact. The team chose more contextualized images in the app to improve the appeal of its content. They also added questions for reflection to the app in audio format and started listening groups to create social interaction around it, as well as WhatsApp groups for busy youth led by young Christian influencers. For more influence, they encouraged respected church elders as well as women and youth to read from the app during a weekly radio show, followed by a time of sharing their testimony and listeners calling in to share their views or ask questions. As a result, the app became much more embedded in the media habits of the end users. The team also decided to hold training workshops for listening group facilitators, and during these workshops they planned to develop and record the questions and testimonies for the new version of the app. As a result, there was more involvement in the development of the product and activity, as well as more independence in using it, even if this was limited by a lack of IT skills among end users. As you can see, thanks to the activities inspired by the Eyes for Impact process, the Mambila Old Testament app now promises 9.5 impact points out of 12 points.